Cool. All right. So happy Monday. Thanks for joining everyone. We're going to go over um, what open houses are probably going to look like post NAR settlement coming up here in August. And there's a couple new forms that CAR has put out to basically address open houses, open house sign-ins, and touring properties. So we're going to go over those today. Again, I'm seeing these, kind of for the first time as well. I mean, I reviewed them over the weekend. So these are new forms to me as well, but I am going to go over them and potentially, and some potential ways to implement them into your business from what I'm gathering from the documents themselves. So we'll get started in just a second. I did have one question for everyone, and if you want to throw it in the chat or send me a text or an email or something. I've had a couple agents ask me if we do any listing pitches on our Monday meeting. And of course, we have not been doing that. But if it's something you're interested in doing, I'm happy to add that into the Monday meeting, just kind of at the beginning here when we're getting started. If anybody has a listing that they want to just share with the team, whether it's coming soon or something like that, we can allow you to, talk about the listing real quick, give you a few minutes. And if you want to show some pictures of it or any info, you can always share your screen. So if it's something you're interested in doing, let me know and we can incorporate that into the meetings. On the flip side, if you think it's a bad idea, also let us know. But we have had a few ask about it. We could probably also do a buyer needs as well if you guys want to do any matchups of potential company listings with like desperate buyer needs. Basically, you have a buyer and they're looking for a very specific property. We could do something like that as well. So if it's something you're interested in doing, again, throw it in the chat and we can maybe start implementing that and a way to do it as well. So with that said, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So let me, everybody should be able to see my screen. Let me make sure volume's good and we will go ahead and get going here. So as I stated in the beginning, and yesterday, and we've been talking about it quite a bit about the changes coming up to our industry, post NAR settlement, which is set for about mid-August. I don't see any changes in that yet. Nothing has changed as of yet. We are just all kind of operating the same way we have been. I've been recommending highly to get to know the BRBC and how to present that and how to get one signed, because they will be mandated and enforced by MLS post NAR settlement. How are they going to monitor that? Are we going to have to turn one in, with every buyer we work with? Does not look like that at all, and I would say that there's no way for them to track that. It's probably going to be more along the lines of, when you cancel a listing, you have to have a cancellation agreement signed by all parties plus the broker. And then the broker has to go in and do the cancellation in MLS. Sometimes I have to email the MLS department and ask them to cancel the listing for us, and sometimes they ask for the cancellation form. So maybe they're going to be doing something like that as well, to where if there was some sort of complaint or something, maybe it's from another realtor, that they would call or email us, the MLS compliance department, and ask for a copy of the BRBC or some sort of agreement, which I would assume these other two are going to be sufficient as well, that CAR put out. So that's my hunch on what they're going to be doing as far as monitoring and enforcing agency agreements moving forward after the NAR settlement goes into effect. So today we're just going to look at Open houses, we'll focus on that a little bit. I thought it was a good topic. I see a lot of chatter out there in Facebook groups about, can we do open houses still? What's it going to look like? Does every single person that enters the open house, do I have to have an agreement with them? How is this going to work? So we're going to answer some of those questions today. Again, this is new to all of us, so I'm reviewing information that I have found, and I'm also going to review the 2 new forms that are coming out pertaining to open houses and touring of homes. All right, so let me go ahead and get going here. So, yep, things are going to change with open houses and property touring. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So if you saw it, you may or may not, NAR put out a document regarding open houses post NAR lawsuit. So I'm going to kind of run through this real quick, and then we'll get into these forms and whatnot. So practice change required by the NAR settlement is that all MLS participants working with a buyer must enter into a written agreement before the buyers tour any home. This has raised questions about how agents should handle visitors to open houses. To help members be prepared, CAR created this FAQ sheet. So can a listing agent hold an open house after implementation of the NAR settlement? The answer is yes. There's nothing changing with that. We can still operate open houses. Can another agent in the same brokerage company as the listing agent hold an open house for the listing agent? Again, that's a yes. Is an agent holding an open house required to have every visitor who enters the open house sign a registration login sheet, a non-agency agreement, or a buyer rep agreement, the BRBC? And again, this is something NAR put out. So the answer varies depending on the type of relationship, if any, that the agent and visitor desire to enter into. And good news, well, CAR thinks it's good news. They have 3 forms to help with this. So again, more forms coming down the pipeline. The release date for the new forms is this month. There's going to be a bunch of them. I do have a link to those forms if you want to check out the drafts. They are not available in zip forms yet, but they are available on the CAR website if you ever go in there. But I do have a link for that if you want to check out the new forms. The ones I'm going to go over, 2 of them, 2 of the new ones. So best practice to ask adult visitors to sign in. Starting late June 2024, CAR's new open house visitor non-agency disclosure and sign in. So this is OHNA SI is the form name, is used. The visitor will be acknowledging that the agent at the open house is acting on behalf of the seller and is not representing them as the buyer. The visitor also can use the OHNA to identify if they are working with another agent. So the open house agent or listing agent will know who to contact about future discussions about the visitor's interest in the property. I'll go over maybe what this looks like here a little further down. So if the open house agent finds out that an unrepresented visitor would like to create a working relationship with the agent, the open house agent may want to ask the visitor to sign either a limited or full representation agreement. The new limited property representation and broker compensation agreement, so that's the LPBC, will be released in late June of 2024. I think it's the 27th they're releasing these forms, and would apply to the open house property, can last no longer than 30 days, and is a non-exclusive only. So there's no exclusive option for that. The buyer representation broker compensation agreement, the current BRBC, can apply to the open house property only or multiple properties and can last for up to 3 months, but may be extended and may either be exclusive or non-exclusive representation. So that one is a little more in depth if you've seen it. The limited one is a 2-pager. I think I kind of like it. after I was reviewing it, so we'll take a look at that in just a second. So if the visitor refuses to sign anything, but instead only wants to look at the property, then it is advisable for the open house agent to refrain from providing any information about the property other than what is on the information sheet prepared by the listing agent. Engaging beyond that may lead the visitor to believe that the open house agent is acting as their agent. If the visitor asks for information beyond what is contained in the information sheet, the open house agent should tell the visitor they cannot provide such information unless the visitor is willing to sign in. Okay, I wanted to make sure I had the chat open, so it is. Okay, so I don't know if that answers questions or gives you or brings up more questions. So let's talk about the OHNA, which is the open house non-agency sign-in sheet. So you can use this as your sign-in sheet for the open house. I think it presents a pretty good opportunity for us agents hosting open houses to kind of up our game here. I'm going to scroll down to it real quick so we can take a look at it. So this is what it looks like. Again, this is a draft. I don't know if they're going to make any other changes to it, but this is rolling out. That's the 24th, not the 27th. So this will be available this month in zip forms on the 24th. If you want to start using it, you don't have to yet. The NAR settlement is not set to take place until mid-August. So what this is showing is the property that they're visiting, the agent, the broker, that would be Rise Realty. It states what the visitors intend, that the visitor is intending to view the property. It states that the agent does not represent the visitor. Communication with an agent, open house tour for benefit of seller. Communication with agent is not confidential. Basically, you can just have them keep filling out this same form. So you would provide this form here. People can sign in and out with this. I don't necessarily love that it has everybody on the same sheet. I mean, I know it would be a lot of paper to not have that, but there might be a little bit of pushback from, some of the visitors that they don't want their information be visible to everybody else. But again, I guess it's no different than a registration book. So let's look at some potential implementation strategy for this form. So many realtors have difficulty with open house registrations. You have people show up, they don't want to register, they give excuses, they write super sloppy so you can't read it. There's lots of challenges we face with these sometimes. So whether it's pushback from the attendee providing sign-in info or statements from the attendee that they have a realtor they're working with, using this form as your sign-in sheet can help clear up these common issues, potentially. This form can help us out with fact-finding when speaking with attendees. So if you do a lot of open houses, you know that a lot of that is, open houses are for lead generation, right? It's a fact-finding mission. We're trying to vet out who is not working with an agent, who's a real buyer, maybe who's a real buyer that has a home to sell in the neighborhood. It's a fact-finding mission. So this can actually help us with that a little bit. So refusal or reluctance to sign in is something we all face at open houses. So now is a great time to educate the public about the NAR settlement, which I'm sure they've heard about, while also getting better clarity on whether the attendee is a potential buyer lead or actually working with an agent. This form establishes terms and conditions for entering the home. Paragraph 1 states the agent who is hosting the open house agrees to allow the attendee to enter and be shown the property on the following terms and conditions. And these are the same terms and conditions as we have right here. So the first paragraph or line on the form, the attendee acknowledges that the agent is not working with and does not represent the attendee. So we're making it clear up front. that we are representing the seller and anything we speak about or do is on the seller's behalf. Any communication or sharing of information with the attendee is for the benefit of the seller. Any communication with the attendee at the open house may be conveyed to the seller. If the attendee writes an offer with the agent will then disclose the nature of the agency relations in the transaction. And if the attendee decides to start working with the attendee should sign a buyer representation with the agent. And then there's one last line or paragraph. It appears to be kind of a protection clause for us. No intention of solicitation with the attendee if under exclusive representation with another agent. So that's just, helping us disclose that we're not trying to solicit their business, but in order for us to have these certain conversations, we need to have an exclusive, or they need to tell us they're under exclusive representation with another agent and have their agent give us a call, basically. So, and if you look at these, this is kind of how it goes as well. So, I kind of like this first paragraph here. It says agent agrees to show property to visitor on the following terms and conditions. So we're setting forth the rules to enter into this house and have a conversation with us. This is something that the sellers may like as well, because, there are some visitors out there that refuse to sign in and things like that. So, we're getting a little bit more strict with allowing people into our homes that we have listed and our homes that we're hosting open houses for, which I personally think is a good idea for safety reasons and a whole other slew of reasons. And again, it's not like someone couldn't just, provide false information, but this does seem to make it a little more serious. And implementing this in a way where you're saying this is because of the NAR lawsuit, we have to do it this way now. It's our policy, it's a NAR policy, it's a policy of the seller. Blame whoever you want for putting this form and having them sign in, or basically denying entry if you want to. Now is a good time to do that, I think, because we have something to, for lack of better terms, blame, which is the NAR settlement. So use this form to up your game. This is an opportunity for us as an industry to show the public we're professionals. Agency relationships matter, and we deserve to be compensated for our time and expertise. Over time, we may start to see less time wasters at our open houses if they have to jump through a few hoops to view properties. If we all implement a new approach to open houses. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Looks like we do have a question in chat. So instead of having one form or printing one for every attendee, it may be a good suggestion to use one form for each category classification of attendee. So yeah, this is one form. You can probably just print off a few of these for your open house and have them just sign in as they go. Use this as your sign-in sheet. So instead of just saying, welcome to the open house, sign in here, now it's a little more serious. Hey, we need you to sign this. These are the terms and conditions for entering into the home. And the public is generally more receptive when there's a policy or there's terms and conditions or something like that to go ahead and doing that. Or if they refuse to, and you want to be really strict about it, you can, again, deny entry into the home. So this is for open houses. So this is not like an agency agreement or anything like that. This is strictly just, it's a visitor non-agency disclosure. What are my thoughts on dual agency now? I have a few thoughts on dual agency. One is if you have a seller who is refusing to pay for buyer representation, if they just said, I'm not going to do it, I don't care if the house sits on the market for 6 months, I'm not going to pay. Go find me a buyer. And obviously our listings get syndicated out to all the major portals. and maybe someone contacts you through one of those portals, wants to see the home, and is, they're not working with an agent and there's no commission being paid, and maybe you're taking this at a discounted rate, you have one of those sellers. I don't know, I think I would not do the dual agency at that point, because there's not enough money in it to make it worth it. You have to think about risk versus reward. Dual agency transactions are one of the higher culprits of E&O claims. So, there tends to be a lot of agents don't always handle dual agency well. I can put it that way. And sometimes buyers feel like they are not getting the full representation that they feel they deserve, or that the seller didn't disclose things, so on and so forth. A lot of agents get commission breath, and they just want to close a deal because now they're getting 2 commissions, or they just want to get the deal done. In the instance where there's no reward for representing the buyer, in the sense of there's no agency being paid unless the buyer is willing to pay for it. And if they're not, I don't know that the reward is high enough to do that. And in that case, I would probably send them the buyer non-agency, the BNA, and let them know I am not representing them. I will prepare an offer for them. I will send them required disclosures and things like that, but it will be up to them to read through and sign them. So once you start advising on them, then you're creating agency, and you don't want to do that. So, if you're getting paid for dual agency, then of course it would still be worth it. But if you're not, I just don't know that it's worth it. Because if there is a claim and you're making a very small commission, it's just not going to be worth it for everyone, in my opinion. But dual agency, I don't really have a problem with it if you're doing it correctly and the risk versus reward is still there. CAR form LPRBC. So this is the limited buyer representation form. So this is a 2-pager. The BRBC, the buyer representation agreement, is a few pages longer. I think it's 4 or 5. This one's only 2 pages. It seems to be a little less aggressive, a little less intimidating. This might be a good one to use, in my opinion, for new relationships. So maybe you have a new online lead that you got, or a new referral, or something like that, and you don't think they're going to sign the BRBC. You're not going to be able to get an exclusive with them to represent them exclusively. This could be a good one to kind of ease into that, like a stepping stone to the BRBC is kind of where I see this. This is a 2-pager. It could be used for open house and for touring properties. So let's say you're going to take a buyer out for the first time for the weekend, and you're going to go see 2 or 3 properties. I think this is the better choice to use, depending on how you acquired the client or the prospective buyer. If you can get them, you're good at presenting the buyer rep agreements, and you've been doing it for a number of years, it's no problem, then continue doing that. But only about 30% of the transactions close with a buyer representation agreement currently. So obviously that number is going to go way up, but to ease into things, this might be a form that you want to start using, as this is, like I said, a little less aggressive. So if you're using it for visitors attending the open house without representation, so let's say this would be after they've already done the sign-in, and you find out that they're not represented, this is what Section A is for. So it states that visitors attending an open house without representation, you are not required to sign a representation agreement to see this property in an open house. It's notifying them of that. If you have already signed a representation agreement with another broker, you should inform the agent holding the open house of the name of the other broker. So what's kind of cool about that sentence is it's again, it's making it more serious to enter this house. If they're like, oh, well, I don't have an agent, or I'm not working with anyone, and then you whip this out and they're like, oh, actually I am working with another agent. Great, we need to know that agent's name so that we can contact them, because you are clearly under representation with another agent. So it's a good time to kind of open up that and vet it a little bit more and get them to be more serious about this. If at this time you do not want the agent holding the open house to represent you, you should not sign this form. You should read and understand an open house non-agency disclosure. That's the previous form. And if you have already signed a representation agreement with another broker and you sign this form, you may be obligated to pay 2 different brokers if you purchase this property. So you're the agent holding the open house, and you've got them to sign in, and now you're asking them to also sign this, maybe after a few, conversation exchanges. You go over 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then maybe the truth starts to come out about maybe they are working with another agent or something like that. We need to know these things because commission disputes could really increase after the settlement takes place, because now everybody's going to be under representation, either exclusively or non-exclusively, but being the agent that shows the home is going to have a lot more weight than it used to have. And if you're on the webinar last week, I talked about things to stop doing as a buyer's agent, and one of those is sending your clients out to go to open houses because the home's too far away, you got something else going on that day. Well, there's going to be aggressive open house agents out there trying to get visitors to sign forms like this, and don't let that happen if you do not have your clients under an exclusive representation agreement, not a non-exclusive, because if it's non-exclusive and they view this home, there's a chance you could be out of commission if they go and sign one of these with the open house agent. So you have to keep that in mind and take this very seriously now. So I'll keep reviewing that form in a second. So implementation strategy, I just went over 1A. So that's the open house section. If after signing in with the OHNA, the agent discovers the attendee is not represented by another agent, so an unrepresented visitor / buyer, and the attendee is interested in making an offer on the property, the agent should ask the attendee to sign either a BRBC or this new, shorter, and potentially less intimidating form, the LPRBC. This form is non-exclusive and is active for up to 30 days from the date of signing. This form states the compensation the attendee will be paying for representation on that property, something the agent has insight on, and can draft compensation section of Form 2B1 accordingly. I mean, if you're the listing agent, you know if and how much compensation is being offered to the buyer's agent from the seller, and you can make this form accordingly, because if you have something we talked about last week, if you have a buyer representation agreement in place with the buyer and you find out that a seller is paying more than what you have put into your BRBC, you cannot make that extra money. So I guess you have a little bit of insight. So that is a little bit of a benefit for this form as well, because you, as the agent, know how much is being paid upfront before you have them sign this form. Question that came up: how many new forms are we looking at? I can show you after this. I have the link open. So yes, last week I mentioned that it's time to step up your game as buyers agents, touching on the points of discontinuing the practice of not accompanying your buyers to open houses. This is one really strong reason not to stop that practice if you've been doing that. I think that there's going to be listing agents out there that are really going to use these forms to their benefit, get buyers to sign these forms, probably put some pressure on them to sign these forms. They may say certain things like it's mandated now because of the NAR settlement. And there's going to be a lot of visitors out there that go along with that. So if you are sending your clients out to open houses, make sure you have an exclusive with them. But also, you might want to educate them not to sign any forms like this, because you may lose out on commission, or like the form says, they may be required to pay 2 commissions after that. So, and you might be the one losing out on it. That's going to be a tough one. So, yeah, if your buyer is talked into signing one of these agreements, just in case they want to make an offer, maybe that's what the hosting agent is saying. Well, in case you want to make an offer, you need to sign this form. And again, the public, they don't have the knowledge of these forms like we do. And they may go ahead and just sign this form thinking, oh yes, I might make an offer on this and I need to sign this. You know, we don't know how these listing agents are going to present this form to the public. So we really need to be mindful of this moving forward. So let's, well, we'll look at 3B of this form real quick before we move on. So 3B, compensation to broker. This is kind of what I was talking about. The amount or rate of real estate commission is not fixed by law. You know, this is being stated on all these forms we're doing now because of the NAR settlement. They are set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between visitor and broker. Advisory: visitor has been advised that how much a broker is compensated and who compensates the broker is negotiable. Broker right to compensation. So we're telling them right here in 3B that by signing this form, there's a high likelihood you're going to owe me a commission if you make an offer on this house. So I would read through this, and this is something you're going to want to slow down and point out to people. And maybe, again, if you're an agent sending buyers out to go look at stuff, you might want to explain this to them, this B1, 2, and 3 here of why, you know, if you want to work with me, if you sign this other form, you won't be able to work with me, kind of thing, because you're potentially not going to get paid. So we're going to look at, section B here, which is for visitors touring one or more properties with an agent. So I'm kind of likening this to when we had the PED during COVID. You know, we had to have a PED signed for every, you know, property that we visited. This is looking kind of similar to that. So if you're going to go take a buyer out, so open houses aside, you acquire a new buyer and you're going to go show them homes. You don't think they're going to sign the BRBC. They're not willing to be exclusive with you yet. You can use this form for touring properties for, you know, maybe that first weekend there. So you're going to check if that's what you're doing, if you're using this for, you know, showing properties, and you need to have an agency and a compensation form in place in order to go do that. Use this form. It's short, it's non-aggressive. So you should check the box for visitors touring one or more properties with an agent. If you have already signed a representation agreement with another broker, you should inform the agent of the name of the other broker. So again, this is kind of a cool form where we're like, hey, if you're working with another agent and you're not telling me the truth right now, there's a chance you could owe them and me a commission, depending on what you've signed with them previously. Maybe they've signed an exclusive with that other agent. And a lot of times these buyers, you know, they don't know what they're signing all the time. They don't read it. They just know what the agent tells them. And a lot of times the agents don't tell them the correct info, or they present it in a way where maybe they're the buyer's a little bit pressured to sign it. So you need to let them know, and that could click in their brain. They're like, well, I don't want to pay 2 agents now, you know, and I do want to work with my other agent. So that could stop the conversation right there and save you time of working with somebody who was about to waste your time potentially going and look at houses on your dime while they're just going to go use their other agent to write the offer. So that happens more than you would think out there. This could help put a stop to that. Number two is if you have already signed a representation agreement with another broker and you sign this form, you may be obligated to pay two different brokers if you purchase a property or any of the properties listed below. Property means a property at the top of this page and any of the following properties. So it would be this property up here, plus any others down here. Now, they only give a spot for technically 3 properties here. Can you have 2 of these forms? Can you make an addendum? I would assume you can do that if you need to add on a few more properties. They don't really have anything for that. And there's no, I don't see anything in here for attaching an addendum to this form, really. Other terms, can you put it there? Maybe you might want to just use multiple forms at this moment, unless the TOA, the text overflow addendum, attaches to this by putting in more property addresses. I don't think it's going to. I haven't been able to use this yet because it's not in zip forms yet. So you can basically use this for 3 properties. So I think that that's kind of a good thing, because I do see that in our industry, agents, showing homes, buyers lying to them the whole time. We're not working with another agent, or they get done showing homes. They're like, oh, well, I'm kind of working with my friend. He's an agent, or my cousin, or something like that. So this is putting them on notice. And this is something I think you're going to really want to point out, is you might be liable to pay 2 commissions if you sign this agreement with me. And at that point, hopefully the truth will come out. And while you may lose a buyer potentially because they are under representation of another agent, at least you won't have wasted your time showing homes. So let's look at the home touring section. Yeah, so if you're use this for touring homes, your home showings. You can use it in lieu of the BRBC. You can use it as a stepping stone to the BRBC. Why it's a better option, potentially, it's only 2 pages long, maybe less intimidating than the BRBC when meeting buyers for the first time, is property specific, and terminates automatically in 30 days. So basically, you're just saying, look, we have to have these. It's non-exclusive. Basically, if you buy any of the properties that we're going to tour today, then I would be, I could be entitled to a commission at that point, because I am the procuring cause of showing you the properties. You can go and work with another agent on any other property, however you want to present this to get it signed is how you're going to do it. But it's a non-exclusive, so it's a little less threatening, and it expires automatically in 30 days. So can you put another one in? Can you extend it? Yes, you can do that. At that point, I would think you would want to probably move into the BRBC though. So yeah, once things get a little more serious, and maybe you've taken them out a couple weekends in a row, and you've done a couple of these limited forms, maybe it's time to move into the BRBC and acquire them exclusively. Things are going well. That's what I would do personally. So when you're filling this form out, it's going to be property that you're viewing. I don't know, put the first one you're viewing that day right there, maybe the one you're meeting at, your name, Rise Realty, the prospective visitor or your potential buyer that you're working with for the weekend, and the date. Put your other properties here, if any, that you're going to be showing. It says right here in 2A, the beginning date of this agency agreement is the date that it's signed, and ends not to exceed 30 days. So ends on 30th day at midnight. Again, we're letting them know that the rates are not set. Everything's negotiable as far as commissions. Compensation amount, you would put in here, whatever percent you're going to be, seeking from the buyer, should they buy one of these 3 properties. It could be percentage, it could be flat fee. Payments from third parties, same thing as the BRBC. It's saying that if a seller or anybody else compensates you, that it will be credited against what is going to be in here. So if you have a 2.5% in here and the seller is paying 2.5%, then all of that would be credited towards what the buyer is going to owe you. So that is still in there. And then any other terms, if you're going to be offering a rebate incentive or anything like that, you would put that in the other terms here. Again, number 3, we're saying, commissions are not fixed. We went over the advisory already, accounting for payments. This works like the RPA. So we have, what line you're on here, and then what to reference as far as, how does the amount of compensation work? Well, and payments from third parties, if you want to see how that works, or if you want them to read that, you would have them go to section 3, which is this section here, and it's all explained. Talks about the cancellation, yada, yada, yada. And then they sign, you sign, as usual. So this might be the better form to use, especially, to get things kicked off with your new clients. I'll go over a few NAR FAQs pertaining to open houses and home touring. And then if you want, we can just look at a list of the new forms. I can put the link in the recording that we're going to post into Facebook, into the Facebook group. I could put a link to that page on CAR. You'll probably need to sign into your CAR account in order to view that page, but it has all the new forms and all the new revisions of existing forms. And they're all in draft, but you can take a look at all of them and read them and get familiar with them. So first FAQ, if an MLS participant hosts an open house or provides access to a property on behalf of the seller only, because that's what you're doing, to an unrepresented buyer, will they be required to enter into a written agreement with those buyers touring the home? The answer to that is no. In this case, since MLS participant is only working for the seller, not the buyer, the MLS participant does not need to enter into a written agreement with the buyer. So again, you're not asking them to sign the limited or the BRBC, but I would still have them sign in to the open house with that new registration form and start your vetting process there. Use that as an opportunity to start vetting out these people coming into the open houses. That is not an agency form. That is a new sign-in sheet. And the sign-in sheet, again, has terms and conditions for entering this home. If you present it that way, you might have more success with getting things signed and vetting out the people entering the home a little better. Are written buyer agreements required when listing agents talk with a buyer on behalf of a seller only or as sub-agents of the seller? Answer is no, the agreement is not required because the participant is performing work for the seller and not the buyer. So yes, you can still have conversations. Are written buyer agreements required when MLS participants perform ministerial acts? The answer is yes. The obligation to enter into a written buyer agreement is triggered once an MLS participant works with and takes that buyer, is working with that buyer and has taken them to tour a home, regardless of what other acts MLS participant performs. MLS participant performing only ministerial acts without the expectation of being paid for those acts and who has not taken a buyer to tour a home. Technically, they are not working for the buyer and therefore do not need to enter into a written buyer agreement. What are ministerial acts? A general guideline is that a licensee is permitted to provide non-agent acts for a customer. This means that a licensee is allowed to complete tasks that do not require the use of discretion or judgment. Examples could be not limited to scheduling appointments, taking payments, providing information about the services being offered, so on and so forth. So appointment setters, things like that, they don't need to have things signed. Okay, so that's pretty much in there. So I'll answer a few questions. I'll leave it up on this page here so we can take a look at it. So what do we have for questions? Where do we find these forms? I'm going to provide, they're only on the CAR. It's car.org. You can log, if you are a member of CAR, you would log into CAR. Up in the top right corner, there is a search function. You could type in June 2024 forms, hit search, and you will see the link that I'm about to provide you. There's a bunch of other ones that pop up. I'm also going to provide the link to those forms, which I'll just show you right now anyways. Hopefully you can see my page. I mean, it's kind of a long URL here. I'm going to share this into the Facebook group in the comment section of this recording. We already have some of these forms, like the ABCD and some of these other ones, AVID, AOAA. They are making revisions to some of the existings. But you can go through here. It's a nice long list of all the ones that they're making revisions to and or adding to zip forms, but they are not available in zip forms until the 24th of this month. So you can review all of them here. And again, I will put this link into the comment section on the recording in our Facebook group. It will probably ask you to log into your CAR account in order to view this page. I think that holding open houses for other brokerages will be going away with this now. Potentially, I figured that question was going to come up. I have not looked into that a whole lot yet. I do want to research that a little bit more. I don't necessarily think it's going to go away, but you might just be handling it a little different. I haven't worked through that yet, but I will, before the settlement comes out and things like that. So on if we can and what you should do. What happens if I put 2% on my BRBC, but the seller offers 2.5 to the buyer's agent? Per the NAR settlement, you are out 0.5%. You cannot earn that 0.5%. The current BRBC says that you can, and that and or it could be credited to the buyer's closing cost, I guess, from the seller. I think they're going to modify that. I'll need to look at this revised BRBC form to see if they are modifying that. The NAR settlement says no, you can't. You can't earn anything more than what the buyer was willing to pay you for your services. So if you put 2% on your buyer rep agreement and you find out the seller is offering 2.5, you cannot make that extra 2.5. So I see a lot of recommendations in there, or people in the group saying, I'm going to put a higher amount in my BRBC and then see how it shakes out with commission once we find a property we're going to offer on. The problem with that is you will need to modify your BRBC before you make an offer on that property. So you would need to say, hey, client, they're offering 2.5% on this. I would like to modify our BRBC to reflect the same. If they say yes, you can modify it. You can use Form MT, modification of terms, to do so. I do see some attorney people in these groups kind of advising against that. But to my understanding, as long as it's done before the offer is made, that it would be okay. You cannot do it after the offer has been made. So that's it for today. If there's no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up. Hopefully that answered some good questions for you regarding what are we going to do with open houses? We have these 2 new forms. LPRBC, again, this is a limited property representation and broker compensation agreement. This is not necessarily in place of the BRBC, but it acts the same, and it is sufficient for touring properties and securing your commission with your client, and also being compliant with the new MLS enforcement that will take place after the NAR settlement. A couple other questions. I'm curious how this will go on a busy open house. Slow ones seem simple enough. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, if you were around again during COVID and we had these PEDs that the PEAD form that we had to get signed for every home that we were going to view, yeah, it added a lot of extra paperwork and things like that. But, you know, control your open house. If you think it's going to be a busy one, get a lender or something like someone to help you with the open house. Maybe it's a spouse, something like that. Someone that can be there to either handle, you know, the inside traffic or to handle the registrations out front. Realtor lender teams work really well with that. And this is a good case for that. If you think there's going to be a really busy open house, I have seen some postings of some open houses going on now in certain locations that are very busy. So I know you can be kind of running back and forth a little bit if you have, you know, 2 or 3 people come at once, 2 or 3 groups, and getting them all to sign in at once can be a challenge. But maybe you want to hold the line and just say, hey, everybody, here's this form. We need your information. And then I'm going to allow all of you to enter the home at the same time. Maybe you want to handle it that way. So come up with your best practices for that. If you've been doing open houses, you know how the flow goes, and come up with how you're going to handle that kind of traffic in case it gets busy. Or even if it's not busy and you just have 2 groups come at once, I would probably hold the line, have them both sign it, explain the form to them at the same time so they both, you know, understand and agree, have them sign in, and then take them both into the house. One other, if I understood your last comment correctly, so if you have a 3% on BRBC and the seller offer is only 2.5%, and you don't modify the BRBC before making an offer, is your buyer obligated for the 5.5%? Actually, this is true. So works the other way as well. You have to remember that the BRBC and this limited form is an agreement, just like the listing agreement, for compensation of services. So we have to get out of the mindset of what is the seller doing and into the mindset of this is what you're paying me for my services. And we are agreeing right now. And we are stating that regardless of if I get compensation from another party or not, you are going to pay me this amount of money to represent you in this purchase. So you have to get in that mindset and treat it more like a listing agreement in those terms, not necessarily in obtaining, you know, a signature on it and getting an exclusive right away. That can be kind of tough. The limited is probably a little bit easier. If you struggle with buyer representation agreements or you've never used one, I would probably start with this one. But that compensation in there that you are putting is an agreement between you and the buyer for compensation for services. Exactly the same way as when you are getting hired as a listing agent, you are coming to an agreement with the seller for compensation for services, regardless of if there's another buyer's agent or not. The listing agent, I mean, the owner is paying the listing agent the total amount of commission, regardless of what happens with a buyer's agent coming into the deal or not. We're saying, hey, we're going to pay you 4%, 5%, whatever. And the agent says, okay, well, of that, I'm going to co-op X amount to a buyer's agent. And if there is no buyer's agent, then you've agreed to pay me this amount of money. So it's the exact same in the way I see it. It's an agreement between you and the client. So yes, they would still owe you the 0.5% unless you modified it. You could have a term in there, you know, if you want to put some sort of term in there about that, should there be less compensation offered, so you don't scare away your buyer or your client. But yes, they would owe you the 0.5% in that scenario. Can you enter 2 to 3%? All I've heard is it can't be open-ended. It needs to have a set amount. I thought the sellers weren't required to disclose the co-op to the buyer's agent in the confidential remarks. Yes, this is true, but um, that's MLS policy. If a buyer's agent asks, is there compensation? You say, yes, there is X amount being offered. So we're not hiding commission now. It's just not being expressed through MLS anymore. They are putting in the concessions field. That's where you can put in any willingness of the seller to provide concessions to the buyer, which can be commission. There's just not going to be a buyer agent compensation field in the MLS like we see now, where we say, what's the BAC? Oh, it's 2.5%. Okay, I know I'm making 2.5%. That field is going away. Um, some of them might go away beginning of August, but at latest, when the NAR settlement happens and is finalized, that field will go away in MLSs. Yes, that was my next question. How will we know how much the seller will pay us? I thought we really won't know until we negotiate the offer. Just ask them, conversation, shoot a text, whatever, call them up, say, hey, I have a client interested in this property. Are you offering a buyer agent co-op? Yes, great. How much? 2%? Cool. You tell your client the same. They said, great. That's what it says on our buyer representation agreement. Let's go check it out. So we're just going to have to communicate a little bit more. I'm sure there will be other ways that we're going to know as well, but it literally can be as simple as shooting a quick text to the listing agent. Listing agents, you need to start responding to people a little bit better. I know there's a lot of them out there that are just really bad with communication, but yes, you need to let them know if there is compensation offered on this property. So, or not. Yes, you can put 0 in the co-op field for the BAC now. You weren't able to before, but I believe most MLSs are supporting that now. But again, that field's going away anyways. I think it'd be better if NAR modify the forms to state that seller commission offer automatically supersedes the BRBC. That's not what the NAR settlement agreed to. So they can't do that actually. So, and then one last, so if they do not want to sign, we are allowed to not allow them into the home. My short answer to that would be yes. And I'm not talking about this form here because you're not asking for representation at the door. But if we're talking about the sign-in sheet, yes. What is your policy? Do you have a policy on open houses? How are you representing your seller? And, does the seller want people who are unwilling to sign and give information about themselves to enter into the home? That they have all personal belongings, jewelry, medication, all of this stuff. So that's what I'm hinting at as far as upping your game as professionals in this industry. Create a policy for yourself, call it a policy, and like I said, blame the NAR settlement if you want, whatever you need to do. But the policy is, hello, visitor, sellers have instructed me to not allow anybody into the home that has not filled out the sign-in sheet. And it could be literally as easy as that. So think about how you're going to word that with your clients, not with your clients, but at your open houses, creating a policy to get these sign-in sheets. I think it's good in the sense of what's coming down the pipeline for us with NAR. I think that this is a pretty decent form, putting the public on notice of we're not representing them. If you're working with an agent, we need to know because you might owe 2 commissions. You might owe 2 commissions if you view this home without your agent. So, and that again would depend, if they sign that limited after you start talking with them. So to recap, I think there are going to be some very aggressive open house agents out there using these forms to secure commissions for themselves from unrepresented or represented visitors to open houses that don't have exclusive with other agents, or even maybe they do. If the client signs that with the open house agent, your client may owe 2 commissions, because the open house agent is going to fight for that. They say, look, they signed the limited when they came in. Yes, I understand. Or I found out later that they were under representation and maybe it was exclusive. Now you, who had the exclusive agency agreement with your client, would have to go and basically fight for your commission, and you're probably gonna have to sue them. So, and I don't think you want to do that. So if you are letting your clients just go and view properties on their own, you might want to stop that practice, because I think it's going to become a problem. And I see agents using these forms to secure basically double end deals where maybe they weren't intending to, couple more in the chat. So how to enforce legibility of reading the sign-in sheet or LB, the limited from the buyers looking at home. I agree. And maybe that's part of your policy. I need it to be legible. Maybe you want to make a little placard or a little write-up right there that what the home showing policy is, because the terms and conditions are expressed here. You can see we're on the sign-in sheet right now. It says, and you can literally almost copy and paste this: agent agrees to show property to visitor on the following terms and conditions. And maybe the additional is, I need to be able to read what you're putting in here. This needs to be legible. Can you have this pulled up, on a tablet or something like that? I would assume you could. But if you're just printing it out, maybe the additional portion of the policy is legibility, or you are asking them right then and there and you're filling it out. So that way there, you can read it. So come up with what your policies are going to be if you're going to be implementing this sign-in sheet. A couple last questions. What about agents who want to preview the home during an open house? Well, that's an agent, so it's not a buyer. You can, I would still have them sign in if you want, but you don't need to have an agency with them or anything like that. And they're not an unrepresented buyer. That's a licensee coming through. You don't need to really create anything with that person. You're not working with them or anything else. You're answering questions on behalf of the seller to the seller's benefit, which it states in here as well. But, for best practices, yeah, you might want to go ahead and have them sign in anyways. Some realtors do that now. I mean, I've gone to open houses and I've actually had realtors want me to sign in just for logging purposes. So come up with your policy on that. But I would say they don't really need to, but if you want to have everybody and just keep it uniform, my policy is to have everybody that enters the home sign in here. That's probably the easiest way to be compliant and be compliant with fair housing and all this other stuff is, consistency across the board. Everybody signs in. If you don't, you don't view the home. So I think that's the easiest way to implement stuff like this. So little bit, great questions, everybody. Thank you for participating. It's a little after 10, so we can go ahead and wrap it up. I'll put a copy of the presentation document in the recording in our Facebook group. Once we post it, it'll be posted a little later today. And you'll be able to view this. And then I'll put that link from CAR to the new forms in there as well. Again, that link is probably not going to work unless you log into your CAR account. So you'll be able to click it. It'll probably take you to the CAR login page or something like that. Hopefully, I haven't tried it, but it's probably going to ask you to sign into CAR in order to view that page. Otherwise, thank you for attending. Let me know if you guys are interested in doing, a listing pitch at the beginning of the meeting. Just say, hey, hey team, I have this new listing or coming soon, bring your buyers, that kind of stuff. If you want to start sharing info like that, we can have a few minutes in the beginning. We're not talking about a whole spiel. We're talking about just a quick listing pitch of something that's coming up, and or maybe something you need to get more eyes on, something that maybe a modified commission on, something like that. But if you need to do that kind of stuff or you want to start doing that stuff, just let me know and we can start implementing that into the very beginning of the meetings before we roll into the training portion. So again, thank you for attending, everybody, and I hope you have a great week.